Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke Beppu, and I hope all of you are doing well today. Continuing with my discussion of the films in the Criterion collection, today, if you don't mind, I'd like to spend some time talking about the film, which is Spine number 14, Musashi Miyamoto. Musashi Miyamoto is a film that was released in 1954, and this was directed by Hiroshi Inagaki and stars Toshiro Mifune. This is the Blu-ray release of the film, or the films I should say, and I'll get to that in one second. So here's the front, and here is the back. And if we open inside, we can see that this has two discs here, and they're both Blu-rays with the booklet. And this release has the three films in this so-called samurai trilogy. So the first being Samurai 1, Musashi Miyamoto, the next being Duel at Ichijoji Temple, and the last being Duel at Ganryu Island. So each film has its own spine number. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the first of these films, which is Musashi Miyamoto, so spine number 14. This Blu-ray set also has new interviews with translator and historian William Scott Wilson about the real-life Musashi Miyamoto, the inspiration for the hero of the films, trailers and new English subtitle translations, and booklet featuring essays by William Scott Wilson and Stephen Prince. Okay, so this is a Japanese film, and it is a Japanese samurai film in a certain sense of the word. But it's a little bit more than that. So I'm going to be talking now about the film Musashi Miyamoto. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest that you stop this video now and you just watch the film at your own pace and leisure. When you are finished, you can always come back to this video anytime, and at that point you and I can discuss the film Musashi Miyamoto. So you're still here, so let's talk about the first film, Musashi Miyamoto. This is the film that stars Toshiro Mifune, and Toshiro Mifune is maybe a very famous Japanese actor who has appeared in a number of Japanese films. But here he plays Takezo, who becomes, by the end of the film, Musashi Miyamoto in a transformative process that involves many adventures or misadventures that are depicted in the film, where he is accompanied at least part of the way by his friend Matahachi, who's played by the very famous actor Rentaro Mikuni. And there is also the seeds planted with respect to maybe a love triangle or a love relationship or a romantic relationship that will develop as the films progress. And this involves the character of Otsu, played by Kaoru Yachigusa. From the outset, we should point out that the character of Miyamoto Musashi is a very famous one, and at least in Japan, and the story of Miyamoto, or Musashi Miyamoto, I should say, is one that has been depicted many times in film, in Japanese film, and also in television and theater and the like. So this is a very famous story in Japan, and at least among Japanese people. I think maybe even if a Japanese person might not necessarily know the specifics of the story of how Takezo becomes Musashi Miyamoto and his exploits as he travels the country and the like, people will know the name of Musashi Miyamoto, and people will also know the name of Kojiro Sasaki, who is a major character that doesn't appear in the first film but will appear in the subsequent two films very, very prominently. So this story is very well known, and I think this film treats the story very, very well, in the sense that we are really given a nice story that is centered upon and grounded by the very human and believable performance by Toshiro Mifune as Takezo. And we see his vulnerabilities. He is very strong and he seems to be very skilled, and yet at this point in his life he is very inexperienced and he seems a little bit maybe at times not so infallible, so to speak. So we see the beginnings of the hero journey, as it were, or at least the setup. And the setup is also in the context of the characters. So Matahachi is set up, and she will play a role later on, and of course Otsu, and she will play a role later on as well. But here we have to focus, I think, on the character of Takezo and his journey and his exploits, whether they be in battle as a soldier, or maybe on the run, and also trying to deal with the disappearance of his friend, and also trying to deal with characters that he meets along the way, and also trying to deal with his own feelings, romantic feelings, or maybe growing feelings therefore. So this is all a very interesting tapestry that's being formed here, created by the core performance of Toshiro Mifune, who does an exemplar job here, really well done. And that is also nuanced further by the element of a sort of humanism, or maybe I shouldn't say humanism, I should say a kind of a search for enlightenment based in the context, broadly speaking, of spiritualism, a kind of an inward focused journey as to the finding enlightenment, whether that be called the meaning of life or some kind of zone of peace in one's mind or inner sanctum, as it were. So this becomes, I think, another core element of the film, and also of the character of Takezo. And this becomes, as we see towards the end of the film, his ability, or the means by which Takezo transforms into the character of Musashi Miyamoto. And then thus by the end of this film, the first film in the cycle of films, we see the emergence of the character, the great hero, Musashi Miyamoto, and then he's off. And the film ends with that kind of closure, as it were. So the creation of the hero, the myth that is Musashi Miyamoto. There are so many other great aspects of this film. The fact that it's a very beautiful color palette, very captivating. The battle scenes are really intense. You feel the horses as they parade, and you see the sword play. But also the character scenes are set most of the time in real natural settings. They don't feel like sets. They're actually in fields, and they're with trees and outside with nature. So there's a real nice sense of, I don't know if it's necessarily called realism necessarily, but there's a real sense of a palpable quality to the nature and the natural scenes. And I think that helps too, because that seems to maybe inherently or subtly link the notion of, let's say, human spiritualism or enlightenment, or the search for enlightenment, with this notion of the natural world, and maybe by extension the identification of some kind of peaceful element in the realm of nature. So I think that's a really nice link that's formed between this use of environment in terms of decor on the one hand, and the growth of the hero's journey and the development of the hero's journey and the path that we see the hero placed on as the film progresses and by the film's end, in terms of a path towards enlightenment, linked, of course, directly with the idea of swordsmanship, but also more fundamentally and maybe more universally linked with this idea of maybe enlightenment and nature. So this is a real kind of total package of a film. And that's not to discount any of the action sequences. They're really quite stunning and very exciting, and it has that kind of serial quality. There are certain elements that happen within the narrative that make you want to keep watching. So it's almost like you're binge watching on a TV show, or first season of a TV show in modern parlance. At the same time, there are also really lovely elements of melodrama interwoven in the narrative. So we have, I think, a kind of a love triangle, or we have other women come into play. So there is this kind of drama or interest engendered in the viewer, like myself. So what is going to happen to these characters? And when the film ends, we're not quite sure what's going to happen. So there's no real sense of real closure. The film doesn't end necessarily very neatly in a really nice, tightly constructed plot. It ends in a way that feels somewhat satisfactory, but it leaves you wanting more. And that is certainly true in terms of the human relationships. There are certain character relationships that are set up and that are not necessarily followed through by the end of the first film, but there is the understanding that we will see further developments in these relationships as the films progress. So let us think, as we go forward with this series, let us think how the films deal with this element of religion and the monks, and how that ties into Musashi Miyamoto's spiritual journey going forward. Let us also focus on his swordsmanship, how the swordsmanship is linked to his spiritualism. And also let us wonder what will happen to Matahachi and what will happen to Otsu, and how that will affect Miyamoto's own personal journey. And also what other threats and challenges will Musashi Miyamoto face as he progresses through. And of course, that is all meant to suggest, of course, the emergence of the great rival of Miyamoto, and that is Kojiro Sasaki. Okay, my friends, let me leave it there, and I don't want to keep you. But next time I will be discussing the next film, so spine number 15, which is Duel at Ichijoji Temple. So please, won't you join me? And until we meet again, my friends, I hope you are happy and healthy and well, and watching a lot of great films. Cheers.